You are now listening to The Empowered Woman, Conversations by Becoming Her Magazine, where we amplify women's voices one story at a time. Hosted by Jasmine Hawkins and Crystal Jordan.
Hi, you guys. Welcome to our podcast. We are super excited to start this journey with our first interview, which will be Heather Robison. I am your host, Crystal Jordan.
And I'm Jasmine Hawkins.
And we are from Becoming Her Magazine. And this is the Empowered Woman Conversations by Becoming Her Magazine. Heather, welcome.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for wanting to be a part of our podcast. This is the first one. So, how amazing is that?
I feel special.
Yes.
So we're going to kick it right off. So, Heather, tell us your story.
Oh, boy. Okay. It's a little loaded, but I'm going to try to shorten it as much as I can. Back in 2010, yes, 13 years ago, the Lord gave me anointed the number 2 right. And I was like, that was a mistake. That's not for me. Nobody puts a number in their business name. That's what I thought back in 2010. I was like, that's whack. I'm from Philly, so it was whack. So I keep going about my life and it keeps showing up. Everywhere I turn, everywhere I look, when I close my eyes, when I open my eyes, when I come in the house, when I leave out of the house, it's all over the place. Anointed the number 2 right. So one day I sat down and I was flipping through the Bible and I said, okay, Lord, wherever I stop, I need this passage of scripture to tell me exactly what it is that you want me to do. Well, I stopped at Habakkuk 2, 2, and 3. First of all, when you open the Bible and you're flipping through, most times you don't stop there, right? Well, that's where I stopped. And the short version of it all is write the vision and make it plain. I said, no. Close that Bible. Went on with my life as usual. Fast forward to 2012, I start writing my first book. But I put it down in 2013 because I walked through a divorce. Pick it back up in 2015. By 2016, I get in contact with a traditional publisher. And 7 years from when the Lord gave me anointed the number 2 right, in 2017, I actually traditionally published my first book, which is A Season of Pressing, A Spiritual Awakening. Now that's 7 years from the Lord giving me anointed the number 2 right. Write the vision and make it plain in Habakkuk 2, 2, and 3, the short version. So I go on with life. The book is out. I'm excited. 2020 hits. My publisher passes away. So 2020 comes and I'm sitting here. I'm like, oh, Lord, I have this book. What am I going to do with this book? Because he was a one-man show, that's it. Everything's back on me. So I have to do a reprint. Have a girlfriend check in 2021, 11 years later, for anointed the number 2 right. Lo and behold, that domain was still available. So 2021 is when I soft launched anointed the number 2 right. But it wasn't until 2022 that I actually reprinted the book. So I did reprint my book and I also wrote 2 other books. So I am now a self-published author of 3 books. But it wasn't until this year that things started taking off. Being on podcasts, being in magazines, being on the radio. I have 2 author awards now. And I actually am being awarded again on the 29th. So now I can say, not only am I a 3-time self-published author, but I will also be a 3-time award-winning 3-time self-published author. So Anointed to Write started initially legally in 2021.
Wow. That is crazy. That is crazy.
Loaded.
Yes. Especially because your publisher passed away and he was a one-man show. So it was like it fell back into your lap. And it's crazy how God works, man. He He works in mysterious ways, but it always works out for your good.
Keep that in mind.
That's what I keep hearing all the time. It always works out for your good. And even though that's a tragedy, but you're pivoting. Like, you pivot instead of you just being like, all right, I give up. You pivot and you kept going, you kept pushing, and you kept listening to God, and you went the path that He wanted you to go. And now look at you. You have 3 awards.
Eventually went the path He wanted me to go.
Right. Eventually, yes. Yes, it took time, but you still did it though.
Yeah.
So that's still amazing. It's still a blessing, and wow.
Yeah, I love that. Me listening to you, all I heard, Jasmine already said the word because we think so much alike. You pivot the whole time, and now you procrastinated before you got to where God wanted you to be, and you adored Him. But once you finally caught what He wanted, you went for it. So it can be a listener listening to that and being like, oh my God, I need to get off of this book idea, or they were, I need to start this business, and they haven't done it yet. You can be inspiring so many women today with just your story alone, and we haven't even got to the deep questions yet.
Right. We just
that's why it's so important for people to tell their story. You don't have to tell all of your business, but you should tell your story, because your story will help other people. That's your impact.
Yep.
Well, speaking of impact, I'm gonna let Jasmine read this question to you.
Okay. So how did the loss of your parents at a young age shape your journey towards self-sufficiency and your passion for helping others?
This is no shade, no tea against anybody. I had no choice. That's the short of it. In life, when you go through certain things, and I've learned this, and I don't judge it, because I feel like people do what they can and what they know how to do, right? We have a tendency of having these grandiose expectations of people to just know how to do things. And sometimes people don't have the capacity to rise to the occasion to meet you where you want them to. So my mother passed away when I was 7, my father at 15. I'm the youngest of 9. So of course I had to go and live with someone else along with the sister that was above me, but she also was 18. So, she really was on her way out the door. But navigating through that, I feel like not only did we have to, as you say, pivot, but those that took us in had to pivot, because they went from being a family 3 to a family of 5, from being a family that had a son to being thrust into a situation where they had daughters, right? So although they did what they could, there's no manual. You really have to learn to be self-sufficient, because yes, family's great. Yes, family loves you, but nobody is going to do for you what your parents will do for you. Again, no shade, no tea, but I was in a position where I had no choice but to be self-sufficient. So instead of flunking out of high school, I actually, again, like y'all say, pivoted, and I became an honor roll student. And I got accepted to 5 out of 5 universities that I applied to. And I did go on to be the first out of my entire immediate family. There's 9 of us, but I was the first to not just graduate with a bachelor's, but I have a master's plus 15. So I took my loss and turned it into motivation instead of using it as an excuse.
I love how you, what would you say, took a motivation, and most people use excuses to get away from things or play victim. I love how you did the complete opposite of that. That is amazing, because I don't know what I would have did at a young age. I would have lost my parents at a young age. I don't know how I would have, as we say, pivot through life. I don't even know how I would have navigated, because my parents are such a crucial part of my life. So for you to hear how you navigated just being 15 years old and be, okay, I have to be self-sufficient, is amazing. gift that God gave you, because everybody don't have that. You have some people that are very self-dependent, who depend on other people to live and survive. They're, or codependent. That's the word, codependent. And realize at 15, I can't be codependent. So I can only imagine that shaped you to the woman you are today.
Yeah, it's not a fun place to be in, but you do have to eventually realize that even as an adult, that, and adults that have their parents, you still have to be self-sufficient, because there comes a time where your parents are done raising you and they kind of need to be able to live their life when you become an adult, right? So that kind of also is something that popped up when you were speaking. I was really close to my dad, but what I took from losing him, we had plans, right? You make plans with your parents. And the plan was for me to graduate and go to college. So I stuck to the plan. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was like, I'm going to stick to this plan. And I did. And sometimes I feel like we expect everybody to react and respond the way we do. And that's just unrealistic. Everybody is built for whatever it is. Somebody said, you're built for it tough. And I'm like, I'm not for it tough. I'm really not tough. I'm not strong. Y'all see that. The way I see it is God physically carried me through everything that I have had to go through so far. And if it had not been for the Lord on my side, where would I be? And that's all I can say is, for the grace of God, there go I. Yeah. It's not my doing.
I love that. I love that. And you use that as motivation too. The plan that you had with your father, you using that as motivation also helped. Yes, it is the grace of God that you got through that. And you were able to accomplish all of your dreams that you had with your dad. And you didn't let it, get you down. Because some people, when they lose their parents, or if they have such a big loss, it just pushes them down like a downward spiral, and for that to not have happened to you, like, I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, I just want the listeners to know it's nothing special about me. Yeah. I just happen to be someone that it didn't happen to. I know people that it did happen to, and we judge people for that. But I don't have a heaven to bring you to or a hell to send you to. So I can't really judge you if you have a struggle, or if there's certain things that put you in a position where okay, well, I'm not doing this. I'm going to give up on this and I'm going to do this. Sometimes it's not as easy as just let me keep going or let me make a plan. There's more to it than that. And we just really have to be very mindful of how we treat people.
I so agree with that. Crystal, did you want to go on to the next question?
Now, I want to say what she said. I want to touch on what she just said about being mindful of how we treat people. I think because we live in a time of everything's being recorded and everything is social media, grace is no longer a thing. Judgment is what people do now. They're judge or footing on the situation. Like, prime example, somebody was just talking about my house being nasty or whatever. And I said, maybe that mom was going through depression and she couldn't face cleaning up, and her house got so bad. And instead of somebody saying, hey, sis,
let me help you
and help you clean up, I'm going to tell a little story. I went through depression after my baby daddy. My mom knew I was depressed. I never knew she knew I was depressed. I thought that I was hiding it from the world, that I was battling depression. So I ended up getting therapy. So I want to say last year sometime, before my birthday, I hired somebody to come in and clean my room. I don't think it was around my room. It was clothes everywhere, but I was still in a depression. And at that point in my life, even last year, I didn't admit to it. So when you said don't judge people are so easy to judge because people don't give people grace. And that's actually the word that God gave me this year, is to operate more in grace. So, yeah. So we can get to your next question. I'm not sure what you want to feedback anything I just said, or you want to get to your next question. It's totally up to you.
Well, I do agree about the grace thing. That was my biggest thing when my niece passed away. Grace. That's all I kept hearing is give grace, give grace. And I didn't really understand like what that meant, you know, because like I thought I was giving grace, but like I wasn't, you know. It was I was judging, I was going through stuff, you know, and so yeah, grace is really not there anymore. It really isn't, and that's something that I'm still trying to work through, is giving people grace, asking people if they need help, you know, stuff like that. So yeah.
Definitely a task. It is a process.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so the next question is, could you share with us some key moments or experiences that led you to establish Anointed to Write? How does your writing service business help others in reclaiming their voice and telling their stories?
So the key moment, that one key moment, was when a season of pressing was in my hand and my publisher passed away. He was a great publisher. Like, he was not expensive. I was one of the first clients he actually had, and his vision was to help people. Pretty much, he wanted to help you to reach your goal and for your dream of becoming a published writer to come true. I mean, I remember times where he was in the hospital. We didn't know he was in the hospital, but he was taking calls. And I watched that. And when he passed away, it was in that moment that I said, we worked on this to get it out. This man passed away, but this book is still supposed to be out. So I realized in that moment that if I would step out on faith and step out of fear, then I would be able to have that impact that I want to have. So it's like a desperation for me. Like, I'm desperate to impact people to come to a place where they are no longer held bound or hostage to whatever it is that's their thing, right? If you struggle with drinking, if you struggle with smoking, if you struggle with any type of addiction, if you struggle with anxiety, depression, you know, we look at these things and we compartmentalize. If it's something that we can see, or we can judge this person because we can see that they struggle with promiscuity, or we can see they struggle with an addiction. But what are you struggling with? Are you nasty? Do you have a nasty attitude? Do you mistreat people? Are you lazy? Are you a glutton? There's so many different things that we will compartmentalize and kind of hide. And for me, the key moment was losing my publisher and also saying this book needs to be out so that it can have the impact that it needs to have. Was I scared? Yes. But I did it scared because I knew that there was something greater behind it. So yeah, doing it scared, number one. I don't know if that's something that everybody can do, but that was something that I did because it goes back to that self-sufficiency and feeling like I didn't really have a choice. I have to do something with this to make the impact that I want to have on the world at large, but specifically my target audience, which is those that feel silenced, whether you're silenced by your position in your family, whether you're silenced by your circumstances, whether you're silenced by whatever it is that you've been through, because that was me. I was the girl that was silenced as the youngest of 9 in my family. So.
You said the youngest of 9. Oh my God. I only have 2 siblings, and they used to drive me crazy as a kid. I can't imagine living in your household back then because, woo, I know that's a lot. Jasmine, do you have anything to add to what Heather said?
I agree. I have 2 siblings that I was raised with. I have other siblings, but I was raised with 2 of them, and that was a handful. I ended up moving with my grandmother because it was just too much. So to have 9 siblings, wow, I commend them. But I have 4 of my own, so I can understand. It's a lot. It's a lot. But thank you for sharing those key moments that helped you through, and that helped you keep pushing. So yeah, so thank you for sharing that with the audience.
Yes, and thank you for using your story and amplifying your voice throughout your story and keep telling your story no matter what. You can tell your story 100 times, but guess what? Every time you tell it, that's one new person who heard it. So I appreciate you telling your story. And the next question is, losing two sisters back to back while starting your business must have been incredibly challenging. How did you find the strength to continue pursuing your goals and fulfill your life mission during such a difficult time?
That's a really good question. And I actually thought about that for a little while because for me, it goes back to the Lord because this, nobody prepares you for losing a sibling. We're prepared to bury our parents because we're supposed to bury our parents. They're not supposed to bury us. So it makes sense. But when it's your siblings, it's a little bit different in that you have a different type of relationship. And so when my oldest sister passed away, that was in 2021, the Saturday after Mother's Day. And that was a shock. I mean, I really think that that was like a downward spiral for me. After that, a series of other things occurred that I had to really just be like, God, I surrender it all to you because I can't carry this on my own. I mean, she passed away. We buried her the Saturday before Memorial Day. I went back to work that Tuesday, lost my job that Thursday. Then the end of June, I had to get a surgery where I had 15 fibroids surgically removed, and I almost lost my uterus. I've never had children, want to have children, but there's also infertility issues. So moving on, in 2022, I had a sister who had breast cancer in 2018, but she had a double mastectomy. 2022, unfortunately, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Now, this sister actually helped to raise me because by the time I came around, our mom was sick. So we had a very, very different and special type of relationship. We were very close. She was the one I talked to every day. And being there to watch her take her last breath. And I can't make this make sense, but when she took her last breath, I found my voice. And that actually is when it started for me. It kind of was like, okay, it's all or nothing now. It's go time. So this is my go season. So starting this January, where it started was on the 21st, I actually had a book signing at Barnes and Noble. And that was 5 days before my birthday. But after having that book signing, God opened doors. He redeemed the time because I was helping to take care of my sister while she was sick. And I couldn't really do things in business. But God will make up the difference. He will make up the deficit. He will redeem the time. He will open doors. If you just trust him, he will rock your world. And for me, it's all God. I can't take credit for that.
Oh my God, Heather. It was so much in that story that I'm trying to unpack. So you said it was so much, and I can't imagine losing my sister that day after Mother's Day. That sounds like it was extremely painful. And I'm like you, I talk to my sister every day. But the thing that touched me the most in your story when you said watching my sister take her last breath, that's when I found my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that was nothing but God. That was so deep. And I hope somebody who's listening to this, who's going through a grieving situation, can find inspiration in what you just said. Because that was very powerful. Jazz, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, that, like, I can't even begin to imagine. Like, can I ask, like, why do you feel like at that moment, that was the moment that you found your voice? Like, that was the moment?
It's funny because I've been asked that so many times. It just was a feeling. I can't describe it. It was almost like a God moment. There was an encounter that took place. And I don't know if I'm like, I got to kind of do this for the family, or I like a part of the healing process for me is putting a noise to my pain, because for so long, it's easy for me to suffer in silence. Very easy, because it's something I've done my entire life. But it's not easy to step out of your norm and do something different. You got to kind of do something different to get something different. And so, although change doesn't happen in a comfortable space, it's necessary. And as I'm allowing God to peel back layers so that I can deal through grief, because when my sister got sick again, then we lost one sister in 2021. So in the top of 22, when she gets sick, and then we find out in April that she's going to die. We didn't know it was going to be like 4 months after. She died in August of last year, so it hasn't even been a year. We didn't know that it was going to happen that fast, but as you're trying to catch your breath from losing one sister, knowing that the other one is going to die, and my cousin and I had to be the one to go and tell her, like, you're going to die. And so these are your options, right? You learn really quick to be strong for someone else, but that's silencing too. When she took her last breath, it kind of gave me permission to grieve. It gave me permission to feel. It gave me permission to no longer have to be the strong one, and to allow God to carry me through it, to wipe my tears, to catch my tears. And so it's still a process. For me, I feel like it's a process. As long as you are breathing, it's a process. You don't really arrive until you take your last breath. But it's definitely been a process, and it is a process. And the reason that I share my story is because I feel like so many people out there are misunderstood and are categorized as being juveniles, black sheep, throwaways, no good, criminals, when in fact they just have misplaced and displaced pain because they've been silenced. So they don't have an outlet. So this is the lash out. And I don't know what we're supposed to do to help that as a society or as a world, but that's my opinion. I feel like that's why you have so much violence, because people have had to suffer in silence. Men are told, you're not supposed to be emotional. You don't cry. You're strong. You get out there and you do what you got to do for your family. Women are told, you got to be strong for your kids. You got to be strong for your family. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do this. All this other stuff. Nobody's really dealing with what they've had to go through, or what they're currently going through. And so you're suffering in silence. You're crying on the inside. You're dying on the inside. And then we're being diagnosed. So I was diagnosed with anxiety last year. I actually was on a phone with a client. I used to work at a bank, and I'm taking a call and I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Come find out it was a panic attack. So here I am working full time, still trying to get the business up and going, trying to finish this book that I did, and trying to do all these different things, and still be there for my sister, and still do my day to day, and still have time for my husband. It just was too much, and I had a panic attack. So dealing with mental health as well as everything else that's going on, you really have to find time to take a beat and sit with yourself. Even if for 5 minutes you go in the bathroom with yourself by yourself, if you get in the shower for 15 minutes, you have to still those times, because otherwise it creeps back up. And we have to figure out how to get it out and how to deal, because you got to deal to heal.
I agree with that. I had my first panic attack, I think it was last year, and I felt like I was dying. Oh my God. It was the most, I've never in my life experienced anything like that. And it was at that moment, I'm sitting outside like, God, I know I'm not going out like this. Like you're not taking me out like this. And from that moment, I was like, I'm never going to allow myself to feel like this. I'm not going to go through this again. I'm not going to let somebody make me get to this point. Like I spiraled, and when me and my daughters, we're currently going through some things right now. And, I've been told like, well, you're making it about you, it should just be about your daughters. And I'm like, but I'm also hurting, I'm also experiencing what's going on. And I felt silenced, and so I kind of took a step back away from everybody. Because like I said, I'm not having another panic attack. If you can't understand why I'm also feeling this way, along with my girls, then maybe you're not the one that I should be coming to, And so I've stepped away, I had to go hermit mode, to keep myself from having an anxiety attack or a panic attack. Cause that's very scary to not be able to have control. I felt so out of control. So yeah, I truly understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Crystal, did you have anything to add?
Actually, you summed it up, honestly. Added that, I don't know if I have anxiety like what you two have described. I know I'm probably going through after my accident, because I had to like squeeze my hands very tight and breathe through it. So, but I don't never think I had a panic attack that I know of. But once again, Heather, I think you sharing your story today, which is so important, and I'm just so happy you gave us the opportunity to even interview you. It's like, listen, I know me personally, I always go back and re-listen to our interviews or re-listen to our stuff, and I know I'm going to find a gem again, because when you're interviewing, sometimes it's hard to hear the gems. You have to go back and listen to it, and then you have shared so much of yourself. I know for a fact you're going to inspire somebody else, and I want to say I love who you're becoming. I hope you keep writing books, because you embody our mission, becoming her. Number one, you believe in God, which is the first part. And I don't know if anybody realized we believe in God. And then secondly, you are unapologetically becoming Heather every day. You are learning from your traumas. You're learning from your experiences. You're taking from your experiences. And you're like, okay, this didn't go how I wanted, so let me pivot this way, or let me see will this outcome be better. I am sorry that your publisher did die, but I think God did that to push you. Like, I truly believe God do things to push us out of comfort zone. So this year, me and Jasmine did a readathon, and it was my idea. I ended up getting sick the day of the readathon, and we was live at this point. It was a 9-hour readathon. Never again. I'm sorry, I'll never do this again. And
13 hours.
It was 13 hours?
Yes, it was from the morning to night. It was all day.
Okay, it was 13 hours. My point exactly, never again. So while we was live, y'all, do y'all not know I had to get off live, and Jasmine texted me, where are you? I said, I'm laying in the bed watching you on live. Jasmine don't like going live.
Mind you, that was really kind of like the first time I've ever been live and in charge ever. And I was just thrown to the wolves.
But it was not, because I couldn't do it. So then when I did finally come back, because my following was there to watch me and support me, it's like, where's Crystal? And I'm like, I'm sick. When I did finally come back, I ended up getting off camera again, because I had to go, what's the proper term for this? Expel food out of my system. And I was like, I'm so happy I got off the live, because I couldn't imagine us people watching and like making that a meme. So God pushed us out. My point of telling that little story is God pushed us out of our comfort zone all the time for a reason. It may not be how you expect it to happen, but it's going to happen the way God wanted it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because God wanted her to get out of her comfort zone. And since then, she has been doing amazing. Because I already do this. Like, I have a podcast on my own. And I'm so used to doing stuff like this. And I go live all the time. But she wasn't used to it. So it was meant for me to be sick that day. Because I was really in the bed watching her. Drinking my soda.
I was
Like,
really in the bed.
I was on the
like,
back
where are
end.
you? Please come back. Please don't leave me.
And she had to carry. And the funny part, Heather, about that whole live, we had authors counseling, authors leaving. It was on the back end a hot mess. Now to everybody else, everybody loved it. But Jasmine was handling it so well. I said, look at her handling this pressure. Because it was funny to me. Not that day, but now it's funny.
It wasn't funny in the
Not
moment.
that day.
No, it was not funny that day. I was like, oh my God. And I tell her, I'm so sorry. You can't cancel it because we had authors book like a month in advance. And we'll be doing it again soon, but not 13 hours. Never again.
No. And she didn't listen because I was like, that's a lot of hours, Crystal. And she was like, we can do it. But it was needed because I feel like because I went through that and I persevered and because what I'm not going to do is fail on camera.
That's right.
I go fail on camera. So, but it allowed me to learn and to feel more comfortable. And now look, we have Becoming Her magazine. We do live launch parties. We're doing this podcast. I always wanted to do a podcast, and I knew that it was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen in this capacity. And I feel like God allowed me to go through that so I can learn and build the skill set so that I can be able to do great, with Becoming Her magazine.
And God made her my business partner. Cause this is So because the readathon was just me trying to celebrate read aloud day, and then months later, actually we had already discussed this platform before the readathon. We announced it during readathon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I had to think of the month it was. We have one more question for you. Do you have time for one more question?
I sure do.
Okay.
All righty. Can you share stories or memorable transitions you have witnessed through your coaching?
I actually had someone who, and so my coaching is, so my coaching is kind of threefold. So I aspire those that want to become writers or speakers to actually go through the process of healing by telling their story either through a book or on stage or through educating. And so one of the things that I was actually to be a part of and actually watch right before my eyes, I had someone who wanted to share their story through a book, right? But they wanted it to be more like their life story, like from beginning to end, where you don't have an ending, you're still here. And I always feel like when people do those kind of stories, I forget what they're called right now, but when they do those kind of stories, you should have lived a little bit, maybe like 60 and up. I don't necessarily feel like when you're in your 20s and your 30s, like you're that close. You could be that close to the end, but we don't know because the Bible says we don't know the day or the hour. But I kind of feel like when you are telling your story for healing purposes, sometimes you have to cluster it, right? So everything doesn't have to be in one book. I don't really think books have to be long. None of my books are long. But I had a girl who, she was like, I want to tell my story. And then it switched to, I want to share my experiences. And when she said she wanted to share her experiences, then I said, okay, that's good. Because those are the things that actually have impact because it helps with a transformation. So she started telling me her story, and I actually was the ghostwriter for this book. So we're going through and she's sharing her story. And one of the things that she told me was after actually going through the process of me sending her what the edits look like so that she can approve them, she had to sit and read her story and she had to sit in it. And she said she did not realize that she was holding on to so much. Now, when she's telling her story, she doesn't sound like she's holding on to anything, right? Because that's what we do. We can put on a mask because what do? We suffer in silence. So she said it made her face her demons in the moment because as you're reading your story, you're sitting in it. She didn't write it. I wrote it for her. You know, when you go to a ghostwriter, you're not sitting through it. But when you sit down and you read your story or you're typing out your story, you're actually sitting in it in the moment. It's almost as if you're reliving it. So you have to, again, deal to heal. So out of that, not only did a book come about, but she also went through the process of hiring a therapist so that she could begin the healing process. And now she's actually helping other people to do the same. So that was a transformation that I actually was able to see and say, wow, you know, sometimes your clients will inspire you more than you ever could inspire them.
I think that's amazing that you inspired your clients, and that client in particular. And what's interesting is you really have to listen to your story after you're done, because you're sitting in it and you don't realize what you're going through. And sometimes we have to. I know people say don't look back, don't look back at your past. I personally always stop to look at how far I came, and I celebrate those small wins.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I just try to welcome in the little wins. Like, okay, I made it this far. Like, it doesn't matter what win it is. It can be I didn't drink Coca-Cola for a week. That's a major win for me. But when it comes to telling my story and her telling her story, I'm happy she had time to work on her healing, because healing is not easy. Getting a therapist, when you get a therapist as a Black woman, I'm not sure if your client's Black. When you get a therapist as a Black woman, it's like, I'm not crazy because of what was said back then versus now, how negative it was, the impact it had on us as adults now, because we're talking about our childhood traumas. We're talking about all of this. And I remember when I first got my first therapist, I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm in therapy because I am battling depression and I'm still in love with my child's father. So because I knew that was the reason why I did therapy. But I kept telling people I know I'm in therapy, I'm not crazy. So I'm proud of your client for acknowledging she needs to heal, and she got professional help, not her friends. You can talk to your friends so much, but at some point it becomes trauma dumping on your friends, and your friends don't listen all the time. Now, there's a fun conversation for once in a while, yes, but if you constantly call your friends, talk about your mess all the time, I'm telling you right now, right here on the Become Her Empowerment Woman podcast, that's too much. Give your break from trauma dumping. Instead of trauma dumping, I highly recommend journaling. But getting professional help is the best thing that ever happened to me. My best friends probably don't like me to have a therapist so much because I always say, well, I pay a therapist. I don't even tell them everything anymore. I just tell my therapist, you know why? She's paid to listen. And guess what she cannot do? She legally cannot tell my business.
That's right.
That's why I got a therapist. Even though I'm on a therapist break right now, I'm gonna contact her in about another week or two. Okay, but Jasmine, how you want to end this? Like, what did she say to end at? Right there.
Well, I did wanted to add to that about the trauma dumping. That's actually what led to me having that panic attack. With somebody trauma dumping on me every single day. They would call me at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not even awake. And I would answer her call. She would trauma dump at 7 o'clock. I'm half asleep, but I'm letting her talk, And then when I had my panic attack, she was nowhere to be found. Because all she wanted me for was to trauma dump. And that's why I do not allow people to do that to me anymore. I'll let you talk about, what's going on. But at some point, we're like, you need help, get therapy. I need to get there. I need to see a therapist, like I'm going through stuff too. So I'm packing on your stuff on top of my stuff. That's not healthy, So I just wanted to add that tidbit that when somebody dumps, it can lead to you having a panic attack. So you have to protect yourself, protect your energy, and yeah.
Man, trauma dumping is hard. Like, I have a close friend. Since she got married, if you listening, I love you. She distanced herself from her friends, and she said she had to find her peace because a lot of her friends was trauma dumped. At that point, and the time I understand she was talking about, because I kind of keep my feelings to myself and I hold it in. But as I went through my trauma dumping with a friend, it was amazing to understand, without even talking to her, what she meant, and I understood it, and I respect that. Heather, how can our listeners find you, find your books?
Yes.
Like, this is your time to tell us where they can buy stuff from you. What do you have in store? If you have any codes, let them know. And I'm gonna give you the floor.
All right. Well, first, I thank you guys so much for your time. This was phenomenal. The best way to get in contact with me is my website, which is anointedthe2right.com. There's a store there where you can purchase my books. I am a coach. I'm actually a personal relationship coach, and that's really for you yourself, not your relationship with your significant other, but your relationship with yourself. And that kind of is very broad, but I feel like it's important because you can't be good to anybody else if you're no good to yourself. And that is something that's really important. I am a speaker, and there are speaking engagements that are going to be listed on my website. All of my socials are on my website. Everything that you need to get in contact with me is on my website, which is anointedthe2right.com. And again, that is anointedthe2right.com. And I did want to leave you guys with this. And someone said something very early on. The scripture that I stand on is Romans 8:28. For we know that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. It didn't say some things. It didn't say most things, the things you want to tolerate, the things you're okay with. It said all things. So that's your trauma. That's your loss. That's your grief. That's your wins. That's your losses, your losses. That's when you're really on a high. That's when you're on a low. Those are the peaks. Those are the valleys. So if we understand that everything that we go through might not feel good, it might not look good, but it's for our good, it makes the blow a little easier to go through. And if you are looking for books that are not long, but they're long enough and they are inexpensive, I have 3 books on my website that you can purchase that will encourage you. I share my story. One is a devotional, and it really, really, really is important, in my opinion, for people to start telling their story. The only way to heal is to deal. You are enough. You have a voice. And so the time is now for you to tell your story. God bless you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for telling your story. And we truly appreciate it.
Yes, we
Thank
do.
you guys for having me.
So, well, you guys, since this is our first podcast episode, we are calling you guys her listeners. So, her listeners, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate it. Please don't forget to support her. If a part of being out in our community, we want us to support women. That's the point of our mission, our brand, and everything we do. Right? So the Her Tribe is our email community, but the Her Listeners is our podcast. And I'm your host, Crystal Jordan.
And I'm Jasmine Hawkins.
And we hope you enjoyed it. And if you need to go pick up a Bible, because God just told me to say this, please go pick up a Bible and find a scripture and marinate on that scripture for the whole week. All right. Bye, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
You are now listening to The Empowered Woman, Conversations by Becoming Her Magazine, where we amplify women's voices one story at a time. Hosted by Jasmine Hawkins and Crystal Jordan.